According to David McCullough, this is the quintessential American story. His book on the Wright Brothers, written a number of years ago, says that the Wright brothers are very underappreciated. He wrote the book to try to bring attention and notoriety to them. Today we're going to talk about why McCullough thinks this is a quintessential American story, what characteristics it has, that this is like us. This is America. The Wright brothers are representative of who we are as a nation and always have been. I'm John Henderson with the Conservative Book Society, reviewing and recommending books from a conservative perspective. Let's get to it. According to McCullough, this is a profoundly American story. We've got tenacity, we've got grit, we've got all kinds of stuff. But I want to break it down into four things that I've identified here in this book as to why McCullough thinks that. First, it's because these guys, like Abraham Lincoln and Ben Franklin, start with little education, just kind of a basic high school education. Circumstances of their life didn't lend them to go into college. They start off with that, and they are able to become some of the most famous people in world history because and that is something that can really only happen in the United States of America. And by the way, especially in the early 1900s, the late 1800s, when they lived, that was a time where only in Europe, you had to be kind of an aristocrat to be able to do anything meaningful in your life. But here in this land now, as in the early 1900s when they were operating, that is something that is uniquely American. Being able to grow up in circumstances where you don't have a lot of financial resources, don't have great education, and that you can work hard enough to achieve whatever dream you set for yourself. Now, the second thing is that this is a story about free market capitalism. There were other governments. The United States government was trying to get a flying machine, and the French government was trying to get a flying machine, and people in little pockets all around the world, governments participating in trying to figure out how you can be powered flight, and that was their big thing. How do you get powered flight? Really, it was these two guys, the Wright brothers, that did this. And they had a bicycle shop where they made and sold and repaired bicycles. And so they were participating in free market capitalism in that level, but they took that to the next level by trying to create and innovate. And that's one of the things that free market capitalism does, is it allows people to innovate. Where they think that there is a need that the public might want, then you can go create that. They didn't have financing. They didn't have anybody backing them. They just had a bunch of books and they had hard work, and they decided to go make a run at it. The third reason this is quintessential America is the tenacity and hard work that they put into it. It's hard to imagine putting that much work at something you weren't sure if it could work or not. Nobody had ever flown before. This had been going on for hundreds of years, that various people had wanted to fly. Leonardo da Vinci had, some ideas about this, and it had just been going on for a long time. And they decided to put all their extra time and personal resources into trying to figure out how to do this. But that hard work was before they flew, but it was also after that Kitty Hawk flight. So they worked really hard up until 1903. They get the first powered flight there at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. But that's kind of the beginning of the story. The story goes on. They knew, what do we need to do to perfect this flying machine? So that first Wright flyer, which is in the Smithsonian, the Air and Space Museum in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., it's still there for all of us to go see today, but that is where this story really begins. They perfected that. Instead of just getting off the ground, that very famous photograph, they were able to do figure eights later. They were able to take passengers. They were able to do all sorts of different things because they kept working at it and perfecting it. So tenacity, the hard work, the grit that it took to continue doing that, was well before they ever got into flight. And then also afterwards. And lastly, this is a story about massive courage. And, you know, as our national anthem says, we are the home of the brave, right? And they exemplify this in that. Think about what it's like that there's no one's ever flown before, no powered flight before, and flying up 800 feet, 1,000 feet above the ground and flying around. One natural occurrence, like massive wind picks up, or a miscalculation is going to cause you to crash and die. In fact, they did. There was a military officer rode along with them, and there was a massive crash. And one of the Wright brothers was severely injured, and the other man died. And they had other crashes, by the way, that they broke their entire machine. It took them days. They were down at Kitty Hawk, and it took them days to fix it back. It took just massive courage. They were injured a lot in order to get up in these first flying machines, these first planes. It just took enormous courage. They said to themselves, though, getting in flight is more valuable. The risk is more valuable than my own life. I mean, where else is that celebrated as a heroic feature than in this land of ours? Folks, I highly recommend that you read this book. It is both inspiring and educational, and it will give you a greater appreciation for the Wright brothers, but also the things that we can do in the future to continue moving towards innovative solutions to make life a better place to live. I'm John Henderson with the Conservative Book Society. Thanks for watching.